I don't know about you, but have you ever heard yourself say, life isn't fair? It's a common refrain in our home. Can we skip to the sermon slides, please? Thank you. It's a common refrain that kids will yell at their parents when things don't go their way. And as cute as Laura is right now, trust me, that sentence is coming. And it's probably going to be when you put a restriction on her. Life isn't fair. Well, it's a regular complaint from children, but it's also a regular complaint from us to God. We yell this at God when things don't go our way. And things not going our way might just be a simple lack of gratitude about what we have or don't have. That's possible. But it can also be a euphemism for when things really don't go our way, we're really talking about suffering or adversity. Whether it's our choices or other people's choices, hardship, suffering, difficulty, adversity, that is a fact of life. And so we do yell, life isn't fair. Life is hard. In fact, Christ himself warned his followers about the hardships you would face in life. If they persecuted me, he said in John 15:20, they will persecute you also. Followers of Christ know that suffering, especially for being a Christian, is part of the Christian life. In fact, when we are not suffering, some of the scriptures say, we should be asking ourselves, are we truly living the way Jesus has asked us to live? Throughout the book of Romans, Paul picks up on this reality of suffering and adversity, that it's not just about persecution, it's more. In Romans 5, he describes how persecution and suffering is part of Christ-like development. He says we will also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope. Later on in Romans, he talks about how who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Not even hardship or trouble or persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword. These things, the reality of these things cannot remove God's love from us. So much so that towards the end of his book, when he starts getting very practical for the Roman believers, he says, have patience, be patient in affliction. When adversity comes, find your way to be patient. Adversity is a fact of life. And with adversity comes stress. That's what this series is about. We're looking at how to deal with stress. And today we're going to ask the question about how can we deal with stress through adversity. What it requires us to do is to reframe adversity. That's the second step to dealing with stress, to combating stress, is to reframe adversity, to think about it in a different way. And as a result, we're going to dive into one passage from a book in 1 Peter. We're going to look deeply into this passage and unpack how Peter says we should deal with adversity. Now, something you need to know about the book of 1 Peter. It's a significant book written to a select group of individuals. And in the beginning of the passage of the book, Peter, I'm going to get Peter and Paul mixed up a lot, so just bear with me. Peter writes, and this is how he opens his letter, to God's elect, exiles scattered throughout the provinces of Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, who have been chosen by God. He is writing to a very select audience, a group of people who he calls exiles, who he calls those who are scattered, but he also calls them the elect. And for the longest time, commentators believed that Peter was writing to a Jewish-only audience because he called them God's elect. And he was writing to only Jewish believers who had been scattered out throughout the provinces of Rome. But now commentators think, as they've unpacked more about history and the timing of Peter, that Peter actually was being quite devious. He was writing a letter to Christians who were largely Gentiles, who were facing incredible persecution, and he wrote his letter with secret code words. Like think of a mystery novel. So he writes to God's elect, and later on he talks about the people in Babylon we think we remember you. And because the Roman authorities were aware of Christians and were persecuting them actively, Peter didn't want to get them into further trouble, so he wrote a letter that would have been carried by a messenger on a scroll from church to church, and if he was stopped and that scroll was open and read, they would have read it and gone, yeah, it's about some Jewish sect, don't worry, it's not the people we're looking for. So he wrote it with some mystery. But what he's writing to is a group of people who are undergoing significant persecution, and that's what we need to hold on to. These people, these Gentiles who had become Christians, who had maybe had some interaction with some Jewish history, so they knew what Peter was talking about when he spoke about elect and chosen, fit into the social structure of their day in a very interesting place. In Roman society, your citizens were the highest level of society. They were the upper class. They were the elite. In fact, being a citizen of Rome came with such a level of protection that you could walk anywhere in the Roman Empire and be considered absolutely safe. Because if anybody hurt a Roman citizen, the entire Roman Empire would come down on your head. But these were not those Christians. They were Gentiles who were not Roman citizens. But they weren't the bottom of society. They weren't slaves. They were what were called temporary residents. People who had permission to move around the empire but weren't citizens yet. But because of this second-class status, they were ostracized. They were ridiculed. They were left out of. They were criticized by the elite. At the same time, they had committed their lives to Christ, which put them in a spiritual orientation that left them open to persecution and struggle. So this is who Peter is writing to. People who don't quite fit into the world, who don't have a place in the society, who are left out of the upper echelons, but aren't the slaves, and yet are being persecuted for their faith. And so he writes to them and says things like, live as strangers in the world. Live as exiles. Remember your future destination. It's heaven, it's not here. Don't focus on the things around you. Focus on those. And in the midst of that, Peter writes the following passage. In 1 Peter 5, he says, humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you. Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of sufferings. And the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. To him be the power forever and ever. Amen. In this passage, I think Peter gives us 4 ways to reframe adversity. Here are the first 2. Do you get it? Way number 1, get low. Way number 2, throw high. Let me explain. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand. If you're in that middle class setting and you aspire to be a Roman citizen and you don't want to be the slave, you want to get into those places where you are welcome and included and have standing, yet you're being persecuted, Peter's response is, let go of it. Humble yourself. Get low. Don't aspire to those things. In other words, let go of your pride. When adversity comes, sometimes we yell, life isn't fair, God, how dare I go through this? Why am I going through this? Some of it is because our pride is impacted. And Peter says, you have to let go of that. And if anyone knows about pride, it's Peter. I will never forsake you, God. Really? Wait till the birds start singing, Peter. And then a cock crows and he hears and he realizes, I've denied Christ 3 times. And he's ashamed. He's humbled. Peter is reminding them, remember who you are. I read a funny joke and I showed it to my son who went, I don't get it. But anyway, it's a Q&A. Ask me any question in the Bible that's somebody trying to show off their Bible knowledge. And the question was, What's the name of the owner of the rooster that crowed when Peter did? It's like, okay, yeah, there's questions we don't know. But what Peter's saying here is, you need to get low. When adversity comes, get on your knees. Get down low. Ask yourself, what are you trying to grab hold of? And what do you think is causing this hardship that you feel adversity shouldn't come our way? Instead, humble yourselves under God's mighty hand. What's interesting there, last week I spoke about how self-sufficiency, contentment is Christ's dependency. Right here is that very truth written for us. Humble yourself. If you want to find a way to be firm in God, humble yourself and be dependent on Him, God's mighty hand, and He will lift you up in due time. The context of this passage is where Peter is writing to the elders of the church, telling them how to lead the church. And so it's very appropriate for us as well to get low. But what about the throw high piece? This is the word for throw, epiripto. It's a word that is translated cast. Cast. Am I saying it like an American? Cast? Is that how Americans say it? Cast? Cast. It sounds like what my cat is. Cast. Yeah, I'm overdoing it. But anyway, cast all your anxieties on Him. The literal translation of this word is to place or put something on someone else with great energy, or to throw on them forcefully, which is why I have this picture of a fisher person. I don't know the gender of that person, but a fisherman who is casting a net and throwing it high. This idea of cast your anxieties on God. Get low, stop worrying about what you deserve, and instead, everything you're worried about, everything that is coming against you, all of the anxieties, the worries, the nervousness, the stress, throw it on God with force. And Peter uses a strange word, cast, and it makes me think of whether he himself is thinking about an encounter with Jesus. You may know this story of Peter, where he and his brothers and his cousins fish all night to get fish, and they catch nothing. And they are tired. They're coming in at sunrise, and they're exhausted. And Jesus meets them on the shore and goes, "How was your night fishing?" And Peter's just, "Terrible. Didn't catch anything. I can't even lie about the size of the fish. I caught nothing." But in his mind, I mean, he was a fisherman by trade, so not catching fish for that night meant maybe no food for the family, maybe no income for the family. This was not a good result. Imagine your boss going, you weren't quite productive, so I'm going to withhold your pay for this day. That's the experience of Peter. And he's anxious. And Jesus says, hey, you know what? Cast your net on the other side. Well, okay, I'll do it, but, you're a rabbi, but you don't know what you're talking about. I'm the expert. But he throws the fish on the other side, and the net fills, and the boat begins to sink. So they call everybody else over to help, and he pulls the fish in, and suddenly there are so many fish. I think the story talks about 153 fish. I wonder if Peter, when he wrote these words, was thinking about that story. And saying to these Christians who are facing adversity and trial and struggle, I know what it's like. So throw with force everything you're worried about onto Jesus. Throw what you need. Throw your desires. Throw your concerns. Put all of that on Jesus with great energy. I think that's part of what he's unpacking for us. When adversity comes our way, when hardship, trial, persecution comes our way, before we respond and go, it's not fair, let's humble ourselves before God and trust that He has something to do in the midst of that. And then God isn't saying, just let go of stuff. Instead, take your anxieties, take your worries, take the hardships we're feeling and fearing for, take your concerns, and with force, throw them on God and let Him carry them. We have a word for that. It's called prayer. To pray, but the concept of the word is energy. Pray fervently, pray with passion, pray with faith, pray with a means of communicating that says, God, this is yours to take. I can't handle it. You need to own it and hold it. So let's get low and throw high. And you know what is amazing in this passage? We discover two fascinating attributes of God. That he's powerful, he's able to lift you up, he's able to bear the weight, and he's caring. Cast all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. That's the God we worship. So how might we practically apply this as we face adversity in this day and age? Well, one, let's choose to be less than we think we deserve. Let's choose to let go of the things we think we should have. The bigger house, the bigger car, the right standing in our society. Let's get rid of those things and give those up. But when persecution comes, let's also get rid of the feeling we have that we shouldn't be persecuted. We shouldn't face adversity. Well, I'm a good person, God. I shouldn't have these hardships. No. When you step into following Christ, he says suffering is going to come. So let's choose to be less, and then let's pray fervently. We have a new permitted driver in our house. You pray fervently. And he's a great driver. I'm not making fun of his driving, but you know what it means to pray fervently when there's disaster or hardship or life or death on the line. What if we took our anxieties to God that way? What if we took our worries to him that way and prayed fervently? So, get low and throw high. What are the next two in this passage? Watch and resist is what Peter says. Look at those passages again. Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of sufferings. Peter says to those he's writing to in these provinces, all Christians are facing this. The family of believers is going through the same thing. So resist along with them. But in order to resist, you have to be on the lookout. You have to be alert and of sober mind. You have to watch. You know when somebody's looking, right? You've all had this experience. Ever been to a dinner and you're at the dinner and the person across from you is on their phone? They're not watching and looking, right? They're not alert and sober. They're distracted. That's what Peter's trying to say. Don't be distracted in your faith. He's saying to us, be focused. Watch for what is going on. Like a person searching for birds. We have an extended family member who loves birds, and they can walk along, hear a bird, and go, and they'll rattle off some name. I don't get bird names. Like, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're just weird, like red-breasted shrike. I don't know. I wouldn't be able to know. But they can also, as they drive along, look for birds and spot them and see them. That's the way he's describing us when we look at the world and see adversity. Watch. Watch for what's happening in the adversity. Watch for who's behind the adversity. Watch for what the plan of adversity is. Watch and be on the lookout for it. Scanning the field of vision. Originally, I had an illustration of somebody standing on guard duty here. When we were being trained in South Africa, all high school kids went off to veld school. That is an Afrikaans term that means field school. We'd be taken into the bush for 2 weeks, and you'd get basically indoctrinated into South African apartheid doctrine. But part of it was to get prepared for going into the army. So they would teach you guard duty. And so you'd be, and I'm going to butcher this. I apologize, Lieutenant Colonel. I'm going to butcher what you're supposed to do on guard duty. But what we were taught is to scan. So when we started, we formed a circle of camps, and there were fires, and we were told, you got to go 20 yards in. So you know what we all did? We walked into the circle. So we went 20 yards and stood inside the circle scanning each other. And along came the teacher and was like, "You idiots, go into the bush the other way." And so we went 20 yards away from the camp. And you're taught, don't look at the fire, focus on the dark, but scan, looking continually. That's what Peter's saying here. As you go through life, don't be blinkered as a Christian. Scan. Look. See the adversity coming. See where the devil might be coming. See where your enemy might be coming at you. Look for the adversity that's coming and begin to understand what adversity is trying to do, and then look for what God is trying to do in it. So watch and then resist. And the idea here is to push back, to stand up to. Others are going through it too, so you're not alone. Stand up to the enemy and what he wants to do. Because the goal of adversity from the enemy's point of view is to break you down to the point that you give up. That's the goal, to bring everything to you that will push you down, break you, break your spirit, break your family. And sometimes, because he doesn't play fair, he doesn't come at you, he goes at your loved ones. Watch and see that plan. And what the enemy can never quite understand is that God uses adversity for his own purpose. And our job is to watch and see, that's your plan, but where's God's plan? And I'm going to go for God's plan. So I'm going to resist your plan. I will not be pushed down and broken by this. Instead, I'm going to focus on them, on God's plan. This idea of resisting. Jesus did it in the desert. But you know who did it phenomenally? Were the British in World War II as bombs came. And Churchill stood up and was, "We will never, ever give up." And no matter how many bombs fell, the opposite effect began to happen. Is instead of being despondent and overwhelmed, people began to feel resistance and feel survival and push back and begin to realize we can make it through this. And then as we combined together, there was power in finding a solution to that conflict. Consider for a moment the adversity you're facing, the hardship and struggle you're enduring. What is the enemy trying to do? But then what is God trying to do in it? And you know the amazing thing we discover in this passage? Is that God describes himself as gracious. Peter ends by saying, the God of all grace will be with you in this. So, practical applications. Ask yourself a simple question when adversity comes your way. What is really happening? What is the goal? What is the enemy's goal? And what is God's goal? And resist or oppose or push back on the enemy's goal and submit to God's goal in the adversity. And then God promises some amazing things at the end of this passage. He uses 4 words, Peter does, that the God of all grace will lift you up and restore you, make you strong, firm, and steadfast. I looked up all 4 of those words because if you look at different translations, they move the word strong to all of the words. They bounce around. And this is Peter's way of 4 times with repetition to say, when you get low, when you throw high, when you watch, and when you resist, God will make you strong. Oh, you didn't hear that? God will make you strong. Oh, wait, you didn't hear that? God will make you strong. Oh, you still didn't get it? God will make you strong. He will hold you. And there's nuances to each word. Restore is bring back what was taken. Make strong is build you up and strengthen you, kind of like somebody facing resistance. Firm is this idea of having faced adversity in the past, I'm able to face it coming forward. And steadfast is this idea of being unshakable. God will do that for you. It reminds me of a home on the Cape. It's a home of friends of ours. It's in East Sandwich. And a number of years ago, in the massive storm that hit the Cape, the storm surge came out, washed out the foundations, and the whole house fell down. Now, we had stayed there, how long was it, a year before, 6 months before, a month before? And I remember the wind blowing, going, oh, this is a little shaky. But the house fell down. And through insurance and rebuilding, they built a new plan. But the house that fell down was a single plan house. And the house they built, they were like, we're going to take over the property and make sure this is as firm as possible. And so they built this 3-story house that's solid and firm with foundation sunk as deep as they allowed to go. And there's a sense of when you go to that house, it's restored, yeah, it's made strong, it's firm, it's steadfast. Well, I don't know about, hurricanes, but it's as steadfast as houses on the Cape are going to be. How much more will God do for you and for me after we face adversity and rely on Him? Will He restore us? Will He make us strong? Will we be firm and steadfast? So how do we reframe adversity? Adversity is not aimless. It is not random. It is a means of God working in and through us. He has a purpose in adversity. And so we are invited to get low and respond to it and think of it as something that might help us depend on God a little more. And then we're invited to throw high, to cast our anxieties on Him. It has a goal to destroy us, but God has a plan, and so we get to work towards God's plan actively and wisely by watching for the plan and then resisting the enemy's plan. And I would invite us all to allow for God to work in us and to do His work of strengthening in us. That's very easy to say when things are going well. It is very hard to live when things are hard, when there's adversity. Which is why I would encourage you, rely on this community. It is a way we can be strong together. And Peter says that to them. Resist, because the family of believers, the family you've become a part of, the family you've joined, this new community that God has created, they are going through it too. And together we can work it through and find a way through. What I would encourage us to do when we reframe adversity is to view it as an opportunity, not a travesty.